8-year-old Mina Park loved the gardens in the Nexoria diplomatic area. She ran through them every day, her black pigtails bouncing as she moved. The purple flowers, there were nothing like the ones back on Earth. As the daughter of Earth's assistant cultural attaché, Mina had to move a lot, but she always found ways to make friends. The aliens on Nexoria looked different from humans. They had smooth blue skin and large eyes that could see in the dark. At first, the local children watched Mina from a distance. They had never seen a human child before, but Mina's friendly smile and curious nature soon won them over. "Do you really have water that covers most of your planet?" asked Lyri, a Nexorian girl who had become Mina's closest friend. "Yes. We call them oceans," Mina explained, "and we have forests with trees taller than buildings." The Nexorian children listened with wonder. Their world had beautiful crystal formations and floating mountains, but no large bodies of water or dense forests. They traded stories for hours, bridging the gap between their worlds. One sunny afternoon, Mina was exploring a new part of the garden with Lyri. "Look what I found," she called out, holding up a crystal flower that changed colors in the light of Nexoria's twin suns. The delicate petals shifted from blue to purple as she turned it. "That's a wish bloom," Lyri said. "They're special. My parents say they only grow where good things happen." Mina carefully placed the flower in her pocket. "I'll show it to my dad when he gets home." That evening was the festival of celestial alignment, when Nexoria's moons formed a perfect line in the sky. The capital city filled with visitors from across the planet. Colorful lights hung from buildings, and street performers entertained crowds. The smell of sweet Nexorian foods filled the air. Mina's parents were busy with diplomatic duties, so Mina stayed close to her guardian, Mr. Han, one of the embassy security staff. But when Mr. Han turned to buy some food, Mina spotted a group performing a beautiful dance with glowing robes. "I'll be right back," she told Mr. Han. "I just want to see the dancers." The crowd was thick, and soon Mina couldn't see Mr. Han anymore. She wasn't worried, though. She had been to many festivals on different worlds. She knew to stay in public areas and find an official if she needed help. The dancers finished their performance and moved away from the main square. Mina followed, wanting to see more. 3 figures in ceremonial robes approached her. "Are you lost, little human?" one asked. "I'm fine," Mina said. "I'm just watching the dancers." "We know a place where you can see an even better performance," another said. "It's not far. Come with us." Mina hesitated. She knew not to go with strangers. "I should find my guardian." "It will only take a moment," the third figure said, reaching for her hand. Later, security cameras would show these 3 leading Mina away from the festival. In the crowd and confusion, no one noticed. When Mr. Han realized Mina was missing, he immediately alerted embassy security. They contacted Nexorian authorities, but the response was slow. "We have many visitors today," said the local security chief. "There are jurisdictional complications with searching certain areas." Mina's father, Tapark, demanded action. "My daughter is missing. What jurisdictional issues could possibly matter more?" For 3 days, human embassy staff and a few Nexorian volunteers searched the city. Mina's mother, Dr. Unipark, a respected scientist, couldn't eat or sleep. She joined the search teams, calling her daughter's name through the alien streets until her voice gave out. On the 4th day, they found Mina's body in an abandoned temple outside the city. The crystal flower from the garden was still in her pocket, its colors now dim. The medical examiner's report left no doubt. Mina had not died by accident. She had been killed intentionally. The marks on her body showed careful, deliberate harm. When the news reached the human embassy, a heavy silence fell. The staff who had helped search, who had hoped to find the bright-eyed girl alive, stood in shocked disbelief. The Nexorian High Council issued a statement. "We express regrettable sympathy for this unfortunate incident. Initial evidence suggests this was the work of fringe elements known as the purity of stars, who oppose alien presence on our world. They do not represent Nexorian values. Ambassador Lee requested an emergency meeting with the High Council. He emerged 3 hours later, his face hard as stone. Without speaking to the waiting press, he ordered all non-essential embassy staff to prepare for immediate departure. "What did they say?" his assistant asked. "They said enough for me to know they won't do anything meaningful," the ambassador replied. "Prepare a direct channel to Earth. Highest security protocol." Back on Earth, Admiral Jum Kim received the news while reviewing defense reports in his Seoul office. The images and medical data from Nexoria appeared on his screen. For several minutes, he sat perfectly still, reading every detail. His aide entered with more reports, then stopped, seeing the Admiral's expression. "Sir, is everything all right?" Admiral Kim closed the file. "Gather the United Defense Council. Immediate session." Within hours, the leaders of Earth's defense forces assembled. The large screen behind Admiral Kim showed images of Mina, laughing at her last birthday party, proudly wearing her school uniform, planting a tree on Earth Day. Then it showed her as she was found on Nexoria. "A human child was murdered on Nexorian soil," Admiral Kim said, his voice steady but tight with controlled anger. "The local government has identified the responsible group but shows no serious intention of pursuing justice." He paused, looking at each council member. "This will not stand." The room was silent. Then General Rivera spoke. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" "Protocol Nemesis," Kim replied. A murmur ran through the room. Protocol Nemesis had been developed after first contact, but never implemented. It was Earth's plan for responding to serious aggression against humans by alien powers. "That's a significant escalation," said Director Choi of Intelligence. "Yes," agreed Kim. "It is." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in generations, Earth's military would show its true capabilities. News spread quickly. People gathered in public spaces, watching updates. Across continents and colonies, humans united in grief and resolve. What the galaxy had forgotten, or perhaps never truly understood, was that humanity's long peace was a choice, not a weakness. And now, for a murdered child, that choice was being reconsidered. The message from Earth arrived at every communication center across the galaxy at the same moment. It played on screens in the busiest spaceports and the smallest colony outposts. It echoed through the grand halls of the Galactic Concordat headquarters. Simple, direct, and translated into all known languages. To the government of Nexoria. Deliver all parties responsible for the death of Mina Park within 30 standard days. No exceptions, no extensions. No diplomat signed the message. No official seal marked it. It came directly from Earth Central Command, an organization that most believed had been largely ceremonial for centuries. On Nexoria, the High Council gathered in their crystal chamber, the message playing on repeat before them. Elder Thrix, whose blue skin had faded to pale lavender with age, waved a dismissive hand. "Humans have been peaceful for generations," he remarked, adjusting his ceremonial collar. "They've dismantled most of their military. This is merely emotional posturing." Several council members nodded in agreement. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as diplomats, traders, and scientists, not warriors. "Perhaps we should consider complying," suggested Council Member Dora, the youngest among them. The death of their child was regrettable. Elder Thrix turned his large eyes toward her. "Would you have us appear weak? The humans have no means to enforce this demand. We will express our sympathies again and offer to include them in our investigation." The decision was made. Nexoria would send a formal response expressing regret, but explaining that their justice system must follow its natural course, which could take many cycles. What they didn't know, what almost no one in the galaxy knew, was that Earth had never truly disarmed. They had simply become very good at hiding their strength. Deep within the rings of Saturn, where ice and rock fragments provided perfect cover, massive shipyards stirred to life. Warships that had been maintained in dormant status, registered officially as research vessels, powered up their systems. Their hulls were made of materials that absorbed rather than reflected scanning technology. On Mars Colony, retired military officers received simple text messages on their personal devices. Protocol Nemesis active. No further instructions were needed. They donned uniforms that had been kept ready and reported to bases that official records listed as scientific outposts. Defense platforms orbiting distant human colonies activated weapon systems that had remained hidden beneath solar panel arrays and communication equipment for decades. In a sleek building in Seoul, Director Soo-Jin Lee of Earth Intelligence stood before a wall of screens, each showing a different aspect of the mobilization. Admiral Kim joined her, his uniform freshly pressed. The Nexorian response arrived, Lee said. They offer condolences and promise a thorough investigation according to their traditions. Admiral Kim's face remained expressionless. And the extraction of our people. Complete, Lee replied. All human citizens have been quietly moved off Nexoria over the past 72 hours. The embassy staff will depart tomorrow, citing routine rotation. Lee watched data streams flow across her screens, showing troop movements, ship activations, and intelligence reports from across the galaxy. They still don't understand, she murmured. They think, because we chose peace, we forgot war. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. A common mistake. Peace was always our preference, not our only option. Across Earth and its colonies, public spaces displayed a countdown clock. No explanation accompanied it. None was needed. Humans understood what it meant. Time for justice for one of their children. On the moon base, General Han supervised the reactivation of the fleet. Spacecraft that had not seen active duty in generations hummed to life under the hands of crews who had trained for this scenario their entire careers. Sir, a young lieutenant approached. The Nexorians are scanning the far side of the moon. Should we conceal our activities? General Han shook his head. No. Let them see enough to wonder, but not enough to understand. It's time they remembered who we are. News of Earth's ultimatum spread quickly through the galactic concordat. Most species had never seen humans make demands in this manner. It caused concern, especially among those who had longer histories with Earth. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 50 species gathered in the Great Chamber on neutral territory. The Nexorian ambassador stood to explain their position. This human reaction is excessive, he stated. A tragic incident has occurred, yes, but threats will not hasten justice. We ask the Council to remind Earth of proper diplomatic protocols. The chamber remained silent until the Aldebaran representative rose. The tall, insect-like being's voice clicked through the translator. My species fought a war with humans, centuries ago, before many of yours had achieved spaceflight. You speak of them as if they are simply traders and diplomats. That is because you have only seen what they chose to show you. The Aldebaran's compound eyes gleamed. What they lack in numbers, they make up for in resolve. When a human says 30 days, they mean 30 days, not 31, not 29. Their history contains a pattern. They prefer peace until something they value is threatened. Then they become something else. The Felnar representative, a feline species known for their calm approach, spoke next. The Nexorians should comply immediately. I have studied human history. They are indeed peaceful, until their children are threatened. Then they become unified in a way few species can match. By the end of the session, 7 species had quietly canceled trade agreements with Nexoria. 3 more recalled their diplomats for consultations. The message was clear. The galaxy was taking Earth's ultimatum seriously, even if Nexoria was not. On Earth, Minna's parents received daily updates from Admiral Kim himself. Her father, Todd Park, had been given temporary military status so he could access secure information. Her mother, Dr. Una Park, had returned to her research lab, focusing on her work with an intensity that worried her colleagues. What do you think they'll do? Tai asked his wife one evening. The Nexorians, I mean. Yuna looked up from her data tablet. They'll miscalculate, she said softly. They don't understand Earth. They don't understand what happens when we lose a child. The countdown continued. 25 days, 20 days, 15. The Nexorian High Council began to notice concerning patterns. Allied ships changed their routes to avoid Nexorian space. Trading partners requested early payment for goods. Then intelligence reports arrived showing unusual activity in Earth's solar system. Perhaps, Council member Dora suggested again, we should consider delivering the purity of stars leaders to the humans. Elder Thrix shook his head. They're bluffing. Their military has been symbolic for generations. We will not be intimidated. 10 days, 5 days, 3. The countdown continued. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, far from any satellites or scanning technology, lay one of Earth's best-kept secrets. Underwater base horizons stretched for kilometers along the ocean floor, hidden by advanced camouflage systems. Most citizens didn't know it existed. Few politicians had clearance to visit. It had been built generations ago during Earth's more warlike days and maintained in secret ever since. Today, the base hummed with activity. In the central command room, Admiral Jum Kim stood before a large circular table. Holographic displays showed fleet positions, troop readiness, and weapons systems status. Around him stood Earth's top military leaders, generals, admirals, and directors who had spent their careers hoping they would never need to gather like this. Among them stood Colonel Topark, Mina's father. His military uniform was crisp and his posture perfect, but his eyes revealed his exhaustion. He had lost weight since his daughter's death. When Admiral Kim had offered him a position on the operation, some had objected. Kim had silenced them with a single question. If it were your child, would you want to be included? The latest intelligence reports, Admiral Kim said, gesturing to the displays. Nexoria still believes we're posturing. They've made no serious attempt to apprehend the leaders of the purity of stars. General Hyun, a woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. Protocol Nemesis is active and proceeding according to plan. The fleet is at 94% readiness. The remaining ships will join within 48 hours. Admiral Kim nodded. Communications. We've established secure channels that bypass the standard galactic networks, replied Director Bot of Communications. We can coordinate our entire operation without detection. And our new weapons systems? Kim asked. Colonel Jun, head of research and development, touched a control panel. A display showed a sleek device the size of a small car. The ECM disruptors are ready for deployment. They'll disable any electronic system without causing physical damage. Perfect for minimizing casualties while neutralizing defenses. For decades, Earth had developed technologies they never revealed to the galactic community. Some were defensive, designed to protect human colonies. Others were offensive, created with the hope they would never be needed. All were now being installed on vessels that, according to official records, didn't exist. What about evacuation status? Admiral Kim asked. Complete, confirmed Director Park of Colonial Affairs. All human citizens have been withdrawn from Nexorian territory under various pretexts. Business trips, family emergencies, routine rotations. Colonel Topark spoke for the first time. His voice was steady, betraying no emotion. And the target list. Admiral Kim touched another control. A map of Nexoria appeared, with several locations marked. These are confirmed bases and homes of Purity of Stars leadership. From our intelligence, all 15 key members who planned and approved the incident are at these locations. No one used the word murder anymore. It was too painful, especially with Mina's father present. They simply called it the incident. Our primary objective is to secure these individuals and bring them to justice. Admiral Kim continued. We will disable Nexorian defenses only as needed. This is not a war of conquest. This is an operation of justice. On Nexoria, The first signs of real concern were beginning to emerge. The High Council called an emergency meeting after receiving reports from their intelligence agencies. "There is unusual activity in Earth's orbital space," reported Security Director Locks. "Ships moving in patterns that suggest military exercises. Energy signatures unlike anything we detected from them before." Elder Thrix, who had dismissed Earth's ultimatum from the beginning, shifted uncomfortably. Could it be routine maintenance? Perhaps scientific vessels? Unlikely, Locks replied. Additionally, our allies' behavior has changed. 3 trading partners have canceled scheduled deliveries. The Aldebaran embassy has reduced staff by 70%. And most concerning, all trade vessels are rerouting to avoid human space entirely. Council member Dora, who had advocated for taking the threat seriously, leaned forward. "Have we located the Purity of Stars leaders as requested?" "We know where most of them are," Locks admitted. "But arresting them would be politically complicated. They have supporters in several provinces. More complicated than facing human retaliation." Dora asked sharply. The council chamber fell silent. For the first time, the possibility that Earth might actually act on its ultimatum felt real. 3 days before the deadline, something unprecedented happened. Every human on Nexoria disappeared in a perfectly coordinated extraction. The embassy staff, business representatives, tourists, researchers, all gone within hours. The few humans who remained behind were those with Nexorian families, and even they received mysterious deliveries of emergency supplies. The High Council panicked. They hastily arrested a handful of citizens loosely connected to the Purity of Stars and announced they would be put on trial. A message was sent to Earth. "In the spirit of cooperation, we have apprehended suspects in the regrettable death of the human child. We invite Earth representatives to observe their trial." Earth did not respond. In the Underwater Command Center, Admiral Kim received the message. He read it once, then looked up at the other leaders. "They're offering scapegoats," he said quietly, "not the actual perpetrators." Colonel Park's hands tightened into fists, the only sign of his emotion. "They think we don't know the difference. They think we'll accept anything to avoid conflict," Admiral Kim corrected. He turned to face the full group. Final briefing. "In 72 hours, we move. Primary targets are the 15 Purity of Stars leaders identified by intelligence. Secondary objective is to demonstrate our capabilities clearly enough that this never happens again." He looked at each person in turn. "This is not revenge. This is justice. We will not harm civilians. We will not destroy infrastructure. We will not occupy their world. We will secure those responsible, demonstrate our strength, and withdraw." General Hyun's voice was soft but firm. "And if they resist?" Admiral Kim's eyes were steady. "Then they will learn that our long peace was a choice, not a weakness." As the leaders dispersed to their stations, Colonel Park remained behind. Admiral Kim approached him. "Are you certain you want to participate in the operation?" Kim asked. "No one would think less of you if you stayed behind." Colonel Park looked up at the display showing Nexuria. "My daughter loved their gardens. She told me about the flowers that changed color in the sunlight. She wanted to bring seeds home to plant." His voice never wavered. "I need to be there, Admiral. Not for revenge. For justice. For Mina." Admiral Kim nodded once. "Then you'll command the team that extracts their leader, the one who gave the order." As Earth's fleet moved into final position, hidden from conventional detection systems, the countdown reached its final hours. Across the galaxy, species waited anxiously to see if humans were bluffing. They were about to learn that humanity had never forgotten how to fight. They had simply chosen not to. The deadline came and went. The countdown clocks on Earth reached 0. And then silence. For 24 hours, Earth went completely quiet. No communications were sent from any human world or colony. No responses were given to increasingly worried messages from Nexuria or the Galactic Council. Human ships stopped broadcasting identification signals. Human trading posts closed without explanation. On Nexoria, the High Council gathered in their emergency chamber. The blue-skinned aliens moved nervously, their large eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of stress in their species. "Perhaps they have accepted our offer," suggested Elder Thrix, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then why the silence?" asked Council Member Dora. "They should have responded." Security Director Lux entered the chamber, moving quickly. "Our long-range scanners have detected something unusual at the edge of our system. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." Before he could explain further, a junior aide rushed in. "The defense grid in Sector 3 has gone offline. Technicians cannot explain why." Within minutes, more reports flooded in. Across the planet, Nexoria's defense systems were shutting down in perfect sequence. No explosions, no visible attacks. The systems simply stopped working, as if their operating systems had been erased. In orbit, surveillance satellites suddenly rotated, their sensors pointing away from specific areas of space. Communication relays redirected themselves, creating blind spots in Nexoria's monitoring network. The High Council stared at reports in disbelief. Their most advanced technology was being manipulated as easily as a child's toy. "How is this possible?" Elder Thrix demanded. "Our systems are protected by the most advanced security protocols in the sector." Director Lux had no answer. The Nexorians had severely underestimated Earth's technological capabilities. The Council was in the middle of their emergency session when the massive doors to the chamber slid open. Standing there were 6 humans in dark uniforms, unlike any Nexorians had seen before. Their faces were calm, professional. They carried strange devices, but no visible weapons. At their head stood a woman of medium height with short black hair. Her uniform bore insignia that marked her as a commander. She walked forward with measured steps, stopping at the center of the chamber. "I am Commander Jin of Earth Special Forces," she announced, her voice clear in the stunned silence. "The Earth Defense Fleet has control of your orbital space. We have disabled your military capabilities. We are not here for conquest or destruction. We are here for justice." Elder Thrix rose from his seat, trying to summon dignity. "This is an outrageous violation of galactic law. You have no authority." Commander Jin cut him off. "We gave you 30 days to deliver those responsible for murdering Menapark. You chose to protect them instead." She touched a device on her wrist, and the chamber's main screen activated, showing a map of Nexoria with 15 locations marked. "At this moment, Earth teams are securing these individuals. They will face justice according to both human and galactic law." Across Nexoria, the operation unfolded with surgical precision. Small teams of human special forces appeared at the marked locations: private estates, remote compounds, government buildings. They moved quickly and efficiently, using technology that could cut through walls, disable security systems, and temporarily paralyze targets without causing permanent harm. In the northern province, a team led by Lieutenant Kang arrived at a luxury estate hidden in the mountains. Their target was Vex Toral, the financial supporter of the purity of stars. As they approached, automated defenses activated, only to shut down seconds later, disabled by human devices. Vex Toral was found in a panic room, surrounded by guards. The human team used stunning devices that temporarily froze the Nexorians in place. Lieutenant Kang approached the paralyzed Vex. "For your role in the death of Menapark, you are being taken into custody," he said calmly. "You will receive a fair trial with representatives from all galactic species present." In the capital city, Commander Jin's team secured 3 high-ranking members of the Purity of Stars who had infiltrated the government. They were taken without a single shot being fired. Local citizens watched in awe as humans moved through their cities with unstoppable efficiency. Many Nexorians had believed humans to be physically weaker than most species. Now they witnessed their speed, coordination, and tactical skill. The operation had been planned to minimize harm to civilians and infrastructure. No buildings were destroyed. No innocents were injured. The humans demonstrated not just power, but remarkable restraint. something that surprised many in the watching galactic community. On the second day, news spread across Nexoria that Earth forces had captured 12 of the 15 targets. Public opinion began to shift. Many citizens had never supported the purity of stars, but had been afraid to speak out. Now they watched as humans delivered the justice their own government had been unwilling to pursue. "They're not destroying anything," one Nexorian father told his children as they watched humans escorting a captured extremist. "They're only taking the bad ones." By the third day, 14 targets had been secured. Only one remained. Drell Kovar, the leader of the Purity of Stars, and the one who had given the direct order for Mina's death. Kovar had gone into hiding in what was believed to be an impenetrable bunker beneath the polar ice. Built during an ancient war, the facility was shielded against all known scanning technologies and protected by layers of security. A special Earth team prepared for this final extraction. Leading them was Colonel Park, Mina's father. His face showed no emotion as he studied the bunker schematics. "Our intelligence suggests Kovar has 6 guards with him," reported his second in command. "The bunker has its own power source and a month of supplies." Colonel Park nodded once. "He thinks he's safe." It was all he said. The team deployed at dusk, their dark uniforms blending with the polar shadows. They moved across the ice, carrying equipment no Nexorian had ever seen. When they reached the bunker's outer perimeter, sensors should have detected them. Nothing happened. "Our jammers are working," whispered a team member. "Their systems can't see us." They reached the main entrance, a massive door designed to withstand explosives. Colonel Park placed a small device against it. The door's locking mechanism simply disengaged, as if deciding on its own to open. Inside, they moved silently through corridors, disabling security cameras and locking guards in supply rooms without confrontation. They reached the central chamber where Kovar was hiding. The Nexorian leader was frantically trying to contact his followers when the humans entered. His large eyes widened in shock. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No one has ever breached this facility." Colonel Park stepped forward. It was the first time he had faced one of the beings responsible for his daughter's death. For a moment, the room was completely silent. "Drell Kovar," he said finally, his voice steady, "for the murder of Mina Park, you are being taken into custody." Kovar looked at the human father, perhaps expecting rage or violence. Instead, he saw something more frightening: absolute control. This was not a vengeance mission. This was justice, cold and precise. The extraction was broadcast across Nexoria. Citizens watched as Kovar was escorted from his impenetrable bunker to a waiting Earth transport ship. Colonel Park walked beside him, never speaking a word, his face a mask of professional calm. As the ship lifted off, many Nexorians realized how completely they had misunderstood humans. They had mistaken patience for weakness, preference for peace as inability to wage war. In 3 days, Earth had demonstrated capabilities that shocked the galactic community, and the restraint with which they used those capabilities was perhaps even more impressive. The message was clear: humans would choose peace whenever possible. But when one of their children was harmed, they would bring their full strength to bear in pursuit of justice. The trial took place on the neutral space station Harmony, orbiting a star at the exact center of the galactic Concordat's territory. The large circular chamber had been designed for important gatherings, with seating for representatives of all member species. The 15 members of the Purity of Stars sat in a row, their blue skin looking pale under the bright lights. Their leader, Drell Kovar, kept his large eyes downcast. Behind them stood human security officers, their faces professional and calm. Representatives from every Concordat species filled the observer seats. Many had traveled for days to witness this historic event. This was the first time humans had ever taken such dramatic action in galactic affairs. Judge Lorne, a respected elder from the Ventari species, presided over the proceedings. The Ventari were known for their perfect fairness and lack of bias. This trial will follow both human and galactic legal traditions, Judge Lorne announced. All evidence will be presented openly. All accused will have the right to speak. For 7 days, the court heard testimony. Security recordings showed the purity of stars planning their action against the human child. Medical evidence detailed the careful, deliberate harm they had inflicted. Financial records revealed how they had paid the temple guards to look away. Most powerful was the testimony of Minna's parents. Dr. Una Park spoke of her daughter's love for Nexorian culture, how she had learned their language and collected their stories to share with other human children. She wanted to build bridges between our worlds, Dr. Park said quietly. She believed we could all be friends. Through it all, Colonel Park sat silently, watching the proceedings with steady eyes. When the evidence was complete, Judge Lorne asked the accused if they wished to speak. Most remained silent, but Drell Kovar stood. We believe humans would eventually threaten our way of life, he said. We thought by striking first, we would show our strength. He looked around the chamber, at the representatives of dozens of species all united in judgment against him. We were wrong. We did not understand. The verdict was unanimous. All 15 were found guilty. Their sentences varied based on their involvement, but none would ever be free again. Justice had been served according to the highest standards of galactic law. In the following months, Earth worked with the Galactic Concordat to establish the Mina Protocol, a formal framework for responding to crimes against children of any species. It set clear procedures for investigation, extradition, and trial, ensuring that what happened to Mina would never happen again without consequences. The protocol was unanimously adopted. Many species had children of their own and understood the human reaction, even if the show of force had surprised them. 1 year after the operation, Admiral Jung Kim addressed the Galactic Council. The large chamber fell silent as the human took the podium. Humanity chose peace centuries ago, he said, his voice steady and clear. Not because we couldn't fight, but because we understood the cost of war. We built ships for exploration rather than conquest. We sought knowledge rather than dominance. He paused, looking at the gathered representatives. But make no mistake, our choice for peace was never a surrender of our capacity to defend our own. We hope never to display our strength again, but we will always protect our children. And now, under the Mina Protocol, we extend that protection to all children across the galaxy. On Nexoria, changes came slowly but steadily. The government reformed, with younger members like Dora taking leadership positions. They worked to build better relations with Earth and other species. Where Mina had last played, in the gardens of the diplomatic quarter, a memorial was planted. Crystal flowers grew there, tended carefully by both Nexorian and human gardeners. A small statue showed a human girl holding one of the shimmering blooms. Over time, the garden became a place where beings from across the galaxy came to reflect. School groups visited to learn about peace and justice. Diplomats walked its paths, discussing how to prevent such tragedies in the future. The crystal flowers that grew there were never harvested. They remained as a living memorial. 5 years passed. Colonel Park surprised many by choosing to retire on Nexoria. He became an instructor at the Planetary University, teaching Earth culture and history. His classes were always full, with students eager to understand humans better. They are not simple, he would tell his students. They prefer peace but prepare for war. They forgive but never forget. They can be your strongest allies or your most determined opponents. The choice is yours. One spring day, as Colonel Park sat on a bench in the memorial garden, a young Nexorian child approached. She had the typical blue skin of her people, but her large eyes held unusual curiosity and courage. "Are you Mina's father?" she asked directly, in the way children often do. Colonel Park nodded. "I am." "My name is Ella," the child said. "My parents named me after a human word they heard. They said it means light." "It does," Colonel Park confirmed softly. The girl held out a drawing she had made, a picture of a human child and an Nexorian child holding hands under 2 bright suns. She placed it carefully at the base of Mina's statue. "I'm sorry about what happened," she said simply, with the honesty only children can manage. Colonel Park looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled and knelt to her level. The anger and grief that had driven him for years seemed lighter somehow as he faced this child who had been named for hope. "It wasn't your fault," he replied, reaching out slowly. Ella placed her small, six-fingered hand in his weathered one without hesitation. Behind her, her parents watched from a respectful distance, along with several other Nexorian families. The garden was full that day, with both humans and Nexorians walking side by side, talking quietly, sharing the space in peace. Children from both species played near the fountain, showing each other small treasures and laughing together. Colonel Park watched them, still holding Ella's hand. For the first time in many years, he felt something new taking root alongside his grief. Hope for the future, for healing between their worlds. As if reading his thoughts, Ella tugged gently at his hand. "Will you tell me about Mina? What she was like?" "Yes," he said softly. "I would like that very much." And so, surrounded by crystal flowers that shimmered in the dual sunlight, Colonel Park began to share stories of his daughter with a child from the world where she had died. Stories of her kindness, her curiosity, and her belief that different species could learn to understand each other. In that moment, perhaps true healing finally began. The end.